Hi class, this is Mr. Edmund speaking. For this video, we'll be going through the use of a variables as a timer. However, before I explain how you actually use variables as a timer in Scratch, let's go through how we actually use a variable to keep track of your scores. In my previous video, I mentioned that a variable is basically a container, or in this case, a basket. So if we were to make use of a variable as a means of keeping track of your scores, be it in the number of goals that you've scored in a soccer game, or the number of targets that you've shot in the shooting game, it will be basically be reflected in the basket. So let's take the example of the shooting game that was previously featured in the previous video. Every time I shoot down a target, the score increases. So let's say I shot the first target. So my score would actually be 1. Hence, therefore, the ball that is number 1 will be in the basket. I shot the second target, my score will be 2. The third target, my score will be 3. The fourth target, my score will be 4, and so on. And the 3 blocks that are essential to manipulating the score in your score variable are as follows: the set score to 0, the change score by 1, and the change score by -1. In my previous video, I did mention that every time when I click on the green flag, the score becomes 0. This is because whenever I click on the green flag, the set score to 0 is actually tagged with the green flag by itself. So hence the score will be 0. Every time when I press on the space button, the score increases, as you can see right here. Why the score increases is due to the change score by 1 block. And every time when I press the down arrow key, the score decreases, and the reason for the score decreasing in value is because of the change score by -1 block. Hence, therefore, the 3 essential blocks are set score to 0, change score by 1, and change score by -1. Now let's get back to using a variable as a mean of a timer. In my previous video, I did mention that your variable is actually a basket to actually keep track of the scores that you have actually made, be it in a soccer game or in a shooting game. But for a timer, what we have to do is basically we have to actually set the initial value or the time that you want to actually have for your game, be it 5 seconds, 10 seconds, into your variable in the first place, and you can actually decrease the value in the basket or increase the value in the basket. So what do I mean? Let's say for this example, I want to set my timer, which is this basket, for 5 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll place the ball 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and hence my initial timer will have a value of 5 seconds. So let's assume that I want to make a timer that counts down. What do I mean by countdown? Countdown, it could be from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So let's say after I've actually created a timer variable of 5 seconds, I want it to count down. So from 5, I take out the ball that is numbered 5, it will have a value of 4 seconds. I take out the value that is the ball that is 4, it will now have 3 seconds. From 3, it goes down to 2 seconds, it goes down to 1 second, and it goes to 0. Hence, therefore, the difference between a variable that actually keeps track of your score and a variable that has got a timer is that you will need to actually set the value, or you will have to give the value of your variable as a timer to the Scratch program in the first place. So how do we actually do that? Let's go back to the 3 blocks. Previously, in the 3 blocks itself, we actually have the set score to 0, the change score by 1, and the change score by -1. So, if we were to actually create a variable to call it timer, how do we do that? Let's go to a new screen. If you recall from the previous video, to make a variable, we go to the Variables tab. we click on a make a variable button and we see this dialog box. So what do you think the name of my variable should be? If you're thinking the name is timer, you're right. And we click OK. And we will see that the timer variable will appear on the top left hand corner of the stage, and that the icon of the timer variable would appear on the left hand of your Scratch program. So we want to actually set the timer to have, say, a value of 10 seconds. So which block do I use? If you're thinking using the set timer to 0, you're right. But there is a tiny modification that you will need to make. What is that tiny modification? Instead of setting the timer to 0, you need to set the timer to, I'll give it 10. So now I have the timer variable as 10. So how do I actually make the timer here become 10? I go to the control block, I click on when green flag is clicked, I tag this block when green flag is clicked to the set timer to 10. Hence, therefore, whenever I click on the green flag, my timer now has got a value of 10 seconds. Now, let's assume I want to create a timer that counts down. So if I were to create a timer that counts down, what is the block that actually enables me to decrease the value of the timer from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6 and so forth? Let's go back to the variables tab. As you can see on the left hand of your Scratch program, which of the following blocks I should actually use to decrease the timer of 10 seconds from 9 to 8 to 7. If you're thinking the change timer by 1, you're right. But what's the modification that we need to make? If you see this 1, we need to change this to -1. And from there, what we'll do is, we go to the Control tab, we use a loop, we place the loop under the set timer, and we put the change timer by -1 into the forever loop. However, by placing this forever loop under the set timer and by putting the change timer by -1 block into the forever loop, it will be too fast for the user to see. So what do we do next? We use the wait 1 second block and we place it under the change timer by -1 block. In this way, the user, it could be your friend or yourself, can actually see the timer decreasing from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6, as I'll show you right now. Notice that the timer is actually counting down. Look what happens. It starts to give a negative number. So how do we prevent that? In this case, under the Control tab, we will need to put an if block, and we'll go to the operators block, and we'll throw out the equal block. After that, we'll go to the variables tab. What we'll do next is that basically we'll check the value of your timer variable to ensure that once the timer reaches 0, your program will actually stop functioning. So how do we do that? After we have dragged out the if block from the Control tab, right here, and we have dragged out the equal block from the operators tab, which is right here, we go back to the variables tab, we drag the timer variable icon from the left hand into the left hand side of the equal block, and on the right hand side of the equal block, we type 0. After that, we'll place the equal block into the if block, and we'll place the if block under the wait 1 second block. So what do we put the if block? Remember that we want to stop the program when the timer reaches 0. So to stop the program, we go to Control, we select the Stop All block, drag it, and we place it here. Now, whenever the program starts, it will start with a timer of 10, and when the timer reaches 0, the program will stop. Now look what happens to the timer when I click on the green flag. The program stops when the timer is 0. However, if you notice that the timer actually starts from 9, so what do we do to actually help the program to actually display the timer of 10 before counting down to 9? If you're thinking using the wait 1 second block, you're right. Let's see what happens. Notice that now the timer actually displays 10. Let's see that again. When I click on the green flag, the timer displays 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there you have it. A countdown timer that actually counts down from 10 to 0. Let's say I want to create a up timer, or rather a timer that actually counts upwards. So what do we do next? We go to the variable, we make a variable. Since we are creating a timer that actually counts upwards, I will call it up timer. We click on OK. Now I have a variable that's called up timer. So what do we do next? Basically what I can do is I will duplicate this whole program. How do I do that is I will right click on this when green flag is clicked, block, and click on duplicate. Notice that now I have two program blocks that have exactly the same codes as it is. But what are the modifications that I'll need to make? Remember, I want to make an up timer. So on this block itself, what I'll do is instead of setting timer to 10, I will set up timer to count from 0, wait 1 second, and remember I want to count upwards. So when I want to count it upwards, I change the up timer by 1. And when I want to reach 10, I want the program to stop. So if instead of timer, I would use up timer. And I'll type 10. So let's see what happens to the up timer. 1, 2. Notice that the up timer actually counts upwards. And on reaching 10, the program stops. Hence, therefore, you have actually seen an example of how you can actually create a timer that counts downwards and a timer that counts upwards. Thank you for watching.